Hey Kev, let's follow this trail over here. This looks like there might be something waiting down there.
All right. Hey, wait a minute. Do you hear that?
Yeah, I thought it was just me. What the heck is that?
I don't know what that is. Whoa, do you smell that too?
That's unbelievable. Hey, look.
What the?
Hey, look, those branches are moving over there.
What the heck is that?
Holy cow, is that what I think it is? Look at that thing.
Oh my God.
It's a freaking Sasquatch. Welcome to the Bigfoot Terror in the Woods Sightings and Encounters podcast. I'm your host, W.J. Sheehan. Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to our show. My name is W.J. Sheehan, author of the series of books entitled Bigfoot Terror in the Woods Sightings and Encounters, all of which are available at Amazon in paperback and ebook. And if you're an audio buff, volumes 1 through 8 are there for your listening pleasure at Audible, Amazon, and iTunes at all. And by the way, I have an exciting announcement. My latest book, a lot of hard work went into it, folks. UFO, Sightings and Encounters, Volume 1. I'm telling you, you do not want to miss out on this. Over 50 accounts, ranging from mutilations, flying triangles, USOs, you name it, this book's got it in it. And if you have an interest in UFOs, it should be available on Amazon by the time you're listening to this podcast this weekend. So go out, grab a copy, grab a Bigfoot book, give them to your friends, read them, but go out and get a copy of this UFO Sightings and Encounters. And now, without any further ado, may I introduce you to my brother and co-host, KJ Sheehan. Kev, how are you?
I'm doing well. How about you, Bill? You mentioned USOs. Those are those unidentified submerged objects?
Yes, unidentified submerged or submersible objects.
Okay, submersible. So speaking of unidentified submersible objects, I was just in San Diego this week, out there on business, and I had a cool hotel room that was right on the harbor there, and of course, because of everything that's going on in the world, I'm sure the naval force there in San Diego, the fleet in San Diego, seemed pretty active while I was there. And it was so interesting. Like first thing in the morning, one day, I think it was Tuesday morning, this huge stealth missile cruiser comes like sailing right by the outside of my room. I was like, what the heck is that? Like talking about something intimidating. Yeah. And then the next morning, I saw one of those completely stealth ships that, like, it almost looks like a submarine that's not submerged.
Yeah.
You know, so it's really low to the water. You can't see any people or anything. There's really not any deck that you can see. And not a lot of windows and stuff that came cruising by. And I'd seen them, like, on Discovery Channel and on the internet, but I never saw one in person. It was wild.
What do you think the length of that vessel was, Kev?
You know, I couldn't tell. It was smaller than the missile cruiser. The missile cruiser was huge, you know, hundreds of feet long. So I don't know. But it's hard to tell when you don't have anything of scale. Like I always use the size of people that are on the deck, you know, as a comparison to the length of the ship. You know, when you look at it and they look like ants, you're like, okay, that thing's 400 feet long, you know.
Yeah.
But there were no people on it that you could see. So, but really weird looking. Super cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a super futuristic craft to behold. And, you know, I always say that when those are the things that you can see or that they allow you to see, can you imagine what they have that you can't see?
Yeah, and they're not making any effort to hide it, obviously. It's a beautiful sunny morning, and it's cruising down the center of the harbor in San Diego. You know, if it was something they didn't want you to see or wanted to hide a little bit, they could take it out at night, you know, enter the harbor at night or leave the harbor at night. And it'd be tough to tell what it was.
Yeah, that's interesting too. How
Yeah,
far
very
away do
cool.
you think you were from these ships looking out the window of the hotel room?
Oh, I mean, if you said I was at sea level, no more than 100 yards.
Wow.
Yeah, oh yeah, they come right down the harbor there, you know.
Wow, I mean, you were uptight and personal with these boats going by.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, super
That's
cool.
incredible. Yeah, really interesting, you know, and it's a head turner. Like you, I mean, over where you live, you always have those gunships flying around and those other rotor-driven planes with the variable wings on them.
Yeah, the Ospreys, V-22
The
Ospreys. I saw a couple of those out there, too. I was with a guy from the Midwest, and he saw the Ospreys. Like, I never saw one of those before, you know, and I showed him some of the videos on my phone when they're coming by and almost landing on the roof of my house.
Wow. Man.
Yeah,
What is like
that's cool.
You know, when they're flying around your house, are the rotors up like helicopter?
It depends. So when they're coming down the beach, you know, doing 150 knots or whatever, they're almost completely parallel with the ground.
Okay.
You know, so more like an airplane.
Right.
And then some of the times they come right over the house, and they've landed over at an old fort that's right near my house out at the coast called Fort Fisher. It's like a grass field there. It's not an airport. It's an old training area for Air Force. And that when they land there once in a while or do a touch and go there, boy, it feels like the house is going to fall down.
Boy, oh boy.
Because, you know, those rotors or propellers, whatever they are gigantic.
Yeah.
And then when they turn them vertical and they come right over you, like at 100 feet or so, it's like open headers on, you know, a 5,000 horsepower engine times 2 or whatever it is. But it's so loud, it's crazy.
I'm just wondering what the prop wash is like.
Oh, yeah,
down
the
off of
trees were whipping around, you know. I was out there washing the car the first time it happened, and I was actually worried because I thought they were having a problem. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, holy cow, is this thing going to go down? Like, are they crashing, you know?
Wow.
I was thinking about taking cover.
Wow. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's incredible.
They're quite something to see. Those V-22 Ospreys are spectacular.
Yeah, I didn't mean to change the subject, but, you know, I have an interest in these as you do, you know.
No doubt about it. The military stuff and the people in the military, you know, as usual, thank you for your service, especially at times of higher tension like we're at right now.
Yeah. God bless these guys.
Yeah.
So what do we have in our cryptids in the news and other oddities this
Yeah,
evening?
so we're going to, I guess it's a little bit of a coincidence with the announcement of your latest book, Bill, but I'm going to give a little bit of an update on some of the stuff that's going on around the publicized and funded investigation of UFOs or UAPs, you know, unidentified aerial phenomena.
Okay.
Yeah, so there was an article a few weeks back in The Guardian over in the UK. And a couple of the folks over there are talking about the fact that, you know, the U.S. government had its release of the report in June on UAPs. And, of course, you know, you had the 60 Minutes episode that covered the Tic Tac incident off San Diego where the Navy pilots, the F-18 pilots, you know, saw clearly, you know, unidentified flying objects showed up on the radar of the fighter aircraft as well as the ship's radar and moving in these like random and high speed motions that, you know, no other known craft is able to do. And also that drone attack of sorts, maybe attack's too strong of a word, but where the Navy ships got swarmed by those drone-like objects, again, off San Diego, out in the Pacific Ocean. You know, very well documented, all during the daytime. And Great footage, even the footage that's released. You can imagine what they have that we haven't seen, and no explanation for it other than, UAP. I mean, it's certainly not a weather balloon or group of weather balloons or weather phenomena or anything like that.
Well, look, if you're anything, swarming U.S. Navy vessels in daylight, they have no fear or don't know what they're swarming or don't care.
Right.
But they could have opened up freaking Gatling guns on them or anything else if they wanted to,
And who knows? Maybe they did, Bill. Who knows? We won't know unless somebody reports on it that was there. But in this article, the interesting thing with all of this research going on and all of these pledges of honesty and openness from the government now, there's a gentleman over there named Nick Pope who spent the 1990s investigating UFOs for the British Ministry of Defense. He's quoted several times in this article, and the interesting thing that he says is that he's confident that 2022 is going to be a seismic year for UFOs.
Wow.
And, he thinks that because of folks talking about it much more openly, that he thinks we're going to see a lot more high-caliber witnesses coming forward, including commercial airline pilots, military air crew, radar operators, and intelligence officers that have direct knowledge of the subject. Because we know, Bill, we've reported on it, and it's kind of common sense, too, by the way, that there are a lot of sightings out there through the years, and people just don't come forward with the information, especially these pilots, professional pilots, because they don't want to lose credibility and perhaps get fired or miss out on a promotion or something like that because people think they're crazy because they say they saw a UFO.
Yeah, Kevin, in the writing of this first volume, UFO Sightings and Encounters, I realized that a lot of people making reports are older, retired, and they've lost the inhibition of talking about what happened to them at that point. And of course, if you're a pilot, once you're in retirement, nobody can hurt you anymore, right? You're not going to lose your job as an airline pilot.
Yeah, you don't have anything hanging over your head. But, honestly, if I was an airline pilot and I saw this stuff, as I'm sure so many airline pilots see when they're flying, even across the U.S., but certainly, I've been on so many flights to Asia and Australia where you're flying for 14, 15 hours at 35,000 feet, under the starlit sky. I'm sure they see a lot of weird stuff.
How about you? You ever see anything looking out the window, or are you sleeping?
I've seen Northern Lights from an airplane. I've never seen them outside of an airplane, but that was spectacular. And thankfully, the pilot came on to tell us that we could see it, because I might have thought I was hallucinating. It looked like the best description I could say is it looked like from the movie Raiders of the Lost Ark, when they open up the Ark of the Covenant and that green freaky stuff comes out of it and is whipping along the ground, bright green. That's what the Northern Lights looked like when I saw it. I was like, what the hell is that out there? Yeah,
but no discs, nothing.
No, not on the plane. I talked about in earlier podcasts when I was out in Los Angeles and I saw what now, and I documented. I have great video of it from my phone. Not shaky video, by the way, like it's good video. And because it went on for about 25 minutes, and now it's been reported as a Trident missile that was fired off of a submarine off the coast of L.A., which we talked about it, Bill. I'm just not really buying that you'd be launching these huge missiles off of subs off of Los Angeles. And this was Friday night at 8 o'clock,
Right. And for 20 minutes, by the way.
20 minutes, it's going north along the coast, and it's like taking up 1/3 of the sky. So you didn't have to be paying attention to see this thing. It was like, what the heck is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah. So pretty cool. And then there's another project that I want to report on, that The Guardian also reported on, out of Harvard College, at the observatory at Harvard College. This is a privately funded project which involves more than 100 scientists, and they're building a telescope system on the roof of the Harvard College Observatory, and it will begin operating this summer, the summer of 2022. And they're promising to make the findings of the project publicly available. And basically, they're going to have this series of telescopes that will leverage infrared cameras to take 24/7 video of the sky, also equipped with radio sensors, audio sensors, and a magnetometer to detect any objects that might be present that are non-visual objects. And then they're going to feed everything they're finding 24/7 through some artificial intelligence computer systems to analyze the data, of course, record the data, and then filter out objects that aren't of interest, like birds, man-made drones, airplanes coming by, meteor showers, and really pay extra attention to any objects that are not human-made.
Well, that's going to be interesting, and I hope they are honest and forthright with whatever evidence they come up with in sharing it with all of us.
Yeah, I'm excited about it because it's basically like a trail camera, series of trail cameras leveraging more than video technology aimed up at the sky 24/7. They got to see some stuff,
There's no doubt about it.
No doubt about it.
Yeah, when you're covering the sky in that manner, with the type of equipment I'm sure they'll have at their disposal, it's going to be some interesting artifacts coming out of that program, I guarantee.
Yeah, and the guy who leads this project, his name is Avi Loeb, and it's pretty interesting. He has a great quote, Bill, that you as a fisherman and me as a fisherman will get a lot out of. And he says, it's just like a fisherman on the beach, standing on the beach, looking at the ocean, saying, where are all the fish? I don't see anything. And he says, obviously, if you don't use a fishing net, you're not going to find anything. So, he talks about this series of telescopes as kind of a fishing net to catch UFO sightings.
Right. Well, you cast a broad net and something's going to fly into that thing.
Exactly. But if you're just looking at the surface of the water, you're not going to see fish. Pretty rarely are you going to see fish.
Yeah, unless something breaches the surface, but
Exactly.
Of course, we all know that once you get eyes under the water, the whole thing is like, wow.
Oh, yeah.
Look at this.
Yeah.
Kev, you remember some...
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say some of the old stuff that we can now see where even looking underwater, when the first divers went down and the first underwater camera footage was shown, which to us is archaic at this point. But when those first pieces of footage were shown to people, they were amazed at what was under the surface that they could now see with these brief pieces of footage that was being presented to them. So this is really the same thing, but more futuristic.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you saw, I'm going to get the name of the ship wrong. I'm not prepared on this front, but I'm just thinking about it. I don't know if you saw it earlier this week, but they found the ship that ran aground on the ice like 100 years ago at the South Pole and ended up sinking. I want to say Relentless, but that's not the name, but it's a similar name like that, where it should have been that everybody died, but the captain exhibited great leadership and told everyone to get off the boat because the ice was going to crush it. And then they got onto these ice floes, and he made it to a place of civilization and then came back and rescued the rest of the crew. But they found the ship under the water, and because the water's so cold down there, there's not much living in it. The footage from the submersible, you can see the captain's wheel of the old sailing ship. It's spectacular, like great condition.
Yeah, and Kev, I don't know how this happens mentally. I was just having this discussion about the captain and the boat last night at work. And do you know I am drawing a complete blank on the name of the vessel and the captain's name?
I know, me too.
I don't know how that happens.
I know. I know it happens for me today because I got up at like 4 o'clock in the morning and I've been flying all day from San Diego. So
yeah, it's like a brain fog.
I need a nap. That's how it's happening.
Yeah, we'll forgive you.
I know. But that's cryptids in the news and other oddities this week. So I got the receiver tuned in every week to what's going on with any of this UFO reporting. So if I see anything, I'm definitely going to report on it. And of course, any of you out there as listeners, you're really great about it. If you see something and say something, and it can be something that you see in the news too, by the way. If I miss something or you see something in another part of the world that I'm not tuned into, please report on it. Send us a note.
I was just going to say, Kev, that, by the way, coming from Nick Pope, that was quite a statement for him to make about this year being a banner year for UFO.
Yeah, seismic year for UFO sightings.
Yeah, that's really, we'll see. We'll see what happens,
Super cool. So do you have a hairy man sighting for us tonight?
I actually do, folks. And this came from a guy named Hector Rodriguez, who, believe it or not, hails from the boroughs of New York City. And pretty incredible what he experienced as a leader in the Boy Scouts. He said this: I had just retired from the NYPD when I got involved with the Scouts as an adult, returning to an organization that I had first enjoyed as a young boy. I should mention that I was a cub and a Weeblo, but by the time I was ready for full-blown Boy Scouts, things weren't great in my family, so I couldn't continue on. I wanted to help boys participate in a way that I was unable to when I was a child. Our troop was in the boroughs of NYC, which is not much of a place for scouting, but better than hanging out on the streets, with many of the young boys having had a pretty rough life. Some came from families that didn't have a proverbial pot to piss in, and if you can believe it, some of the boys had never seen a beach or been out of their borough their entire life. Such is the life of many inner-city youths. Some of the older men and I would pool together cash periodically to help the kids out when they needed it. The leaders and I had gotten together to plan a trip. We wanted to gear it around both scouting and vacationing. And when we unveiled our plan to the boys, they went crazy. In a year, we were going to go to Yellowstone. Now, for the most part, these kids could not count on family money to fund them, and we knew that. So we had the boys do some fundraisers in their churches and pounding the bricks for some cash from local businesses. They actually did quite well, and the leaders and I kicked in about $5,000 in total to supplement the rest of the money that we needed. We had planned ahead and made reservations for 2 cabins near the park. There were 4 adults and 9 boys in total. Knowing that it would be a tight squeeze, nobody cared, for this would be the trip of a lifetime for all of us. The furthest I had ever been from home was a charter fishing trip in Montauk Point, Long Island. Even though I was 51, I was still very much like these little guys. In my heart, I knew that this trip would provide good and lasting memories for all of us as well. They were a great bunch of young people, and they were proud of being scouts. And finally, all the pieces came together. We arrived at the cabins. They were really cool, and the boys were already grinning from ear to ear. After a life of never seeing anything other than concrete and cars, this location was paradise. And it was the beginning of something that I never wanted to end. Our agenda was to do a little bit of everything, which involved a lot of walking, but we were all up to the task, and wild horses couldn't have slowed down the boys and myself and the others from completing our agenda. Finally, all the pieces came together. Excuse me, I backtracked. If I recall correctly, we were on our fourth day in the park when we scoped out a fairly rigorous trail that we would take up as high as we could along the side of the mountain. 3 of the men were at the head of the pack, and I was trailing behind to catch any stragglers. We reached an area where we hugged the side of a rock wall as we walked, with a steep hillside sloping off and down to our left. The hillside was covered with a great deal of smaller and larger pine trees. Even though it was nowhere near the end of the trail, this was about as high as we would go this day, and so we stopped for a refreshment break before starting our descent. As we set off, I realized that something inside of my boot was poking my foot. So I stopped to take my boot off without saying anything to the others, and they kept on walking without me. At the time, I thought nothing of it and that it would only take a minute, and I'd scurry to catch up with them. When I had finished and looked up, they were already gone around the bend and had passed clearly out of my sight, and I couldn't hear their voices anymore either. I was putting the boot back on as the tops of several trees off to my right side started to shake violently. A few seconds later, a large ape-like monster emerged from the side of this wooded slope, walking on all fours. It stopped directly in front of me, blocking the trail and my descent, rising to its hind legs. It was almost the same height as me, which was a little over 6 feet tall, but it must have weighed 700 pounds since its body was like a block of muscles. The creature's face was kind of like a human's, but it didn't look entirely like a gorilla either. It was sort of like a hybrid, if that makes any sense to you. All it did was stand there, moving its head around in a weird way, while not really focusing its eyes on me. It kept opening and shutting its mouth like it wanted to stretch its jaws without making a sound. After a minute, it started to swat the branches next to it, and frankly, I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to shout for fear that I would startle it, so I started to slowly backtrack up the trail, hoping it would go back down the slope, but it didn't. Instead, this thing started to follow me up the trail, and I didn't know what to do if it would attack me. I withdrew my knife, since it was the only thing I had on me, and braced myself for what I believed would be the inevitable. Suddenly, I could hear the group calling my name, and from the sounds of their voices, they were obviously getting closer and had no way of knowing what they were walking into. As their voices got louder and louder, this thing started shaking and twitching, when with one quick hop, it leapt off the side of the trail and back down the slope into the trees. I could see some trees moving and could hear it going down the side of the embankment. When we met back up, I was asked all the usual questions. Where were you? Why didn't you tell us to stop? We thought you got hurt. All I said to them was that something was hurting my foot and I had stopped to take my boot off. I didn't want to scare them, and I said nothing. That night when the boys nodded off, the guys and I shared a couple of beers, and I told them what really happened on the trail. John said to me that he knew something was up when he looked at my face, saying I looked as white as a ghost. Hearing about what transpired left them just as baffled as I had been while I was experiencing it. To this day, the boys have never heard a word about it. In fact, one of the boys is about to retire from the NYPD. Time really flies. And as I always do, I asked Hector to embellish on the description of the creature. And here is what he said. Well, its head was slightly cone-shaped. It didn't come to a sharp... Excuse me. Its head was slightly cone-shaped. It didn't come to a sharp point, but it wasn't rounded like a man's either. It also stunk a little, kind of like a locker room after a workout. The eyes were black as an 8-ball and very shiny, but they were also deeply recessed in its head. It had an extremely large jaw that jutted out at the chin, which reminded me of the old cartoon character Gigantor, the space-age robot. I was less than 15 feet away from this thing, and it had a lot of hair on it, but not entirely covered like a bear or a dog. The hair also was longer in length than animal fur. In some areas, it must have been 8 or 10 inches. It looked really nervous, and its movements were really jerky and abrupt. It made no sudden movements toward me, but who knows what might have happened if the circumstances were different. It was built like some kind of superhuman lineman. It had virtually no waist. Rather, the beast was like a wide cube of muscles. Its arms were extremely long and thick, and I could see the individual muscles through the fur. When it wasn't moving, its hands were at full length below its knees. And when it walked, it wasn't like a monkey or a chimp. The thing walked like you and me, standing straight up except for a slight hunch in its posture. Most of that lean was with its head, which seemed to sit forward of its shoulders. I think when I initially saw it emerge, it was climbing up the hillside like we would, using its hands and feet for grip. Well, that's about all I can say. It was an astonishing experience. What do you think of that, Kev?
That's pretty wild, Bill. Like these scoutmasters running into the hairy man, right? Of course, it's in a big national park. It's probably off the beaten path a little bit in the national park if they're going out and camping and hiking as a scouting troop. So more likely to see something.
You know what it reminded me of, too? These accounts of missing people where one person gets picked off, never to be seen again. And if you think about this guy, he had stopped. Now, if you were with a group of people and people were laughing and carousing around with each other, hiking around, and all of a sudden Bill at the back disappears, you're not necessarily thinking the guy behind you is going to disappear from the planet. In this case, this guy just knelt down to pull his boot off and pull a thorn out or whatever was bothering his foot and didn't say anything.
Right.
So he was just thinking like, yeah, I'll catch up with him. Just give me a minute here, and just bent down, slipped his boot off, and figured if I have to, I'll trot and catch up with him. But
yeah, common mistake, by the way. You don't want to do that because even if it's not the hairy man, you don't want to be catching up, slip and fall, and people don't even know you weren't with them.
Yeah, I mean, would I have done that? I think I could say I wouldn't have. I probably would have just said, hey, hang on for a minute, guys. I got something sticking my foot.
Exactly. At least to the person that's right in front of you.
Right.
You don't have to announce it to the whole group or something like that. You don't have to stop everybody. But certainly the person right in front of you if you're the last one.
But how about this? How about this thing coming up out of the bushes and blocking his path?
Ooh, crazy.
Yeah, just standing there, not attacking him, not doing anything, just kind of moving around. He said it was stretching its mouth open and, maybe moving around.
He definitely got a close-up view, and the description, did it justice for sure. Those dark black eyes, close enough to smell it too, right?
Yeah, and 15 feet away, he says.
Yeah,
that's close. Yeah, that's closer than I want to be under any circumstances.
No doubt about it.
But listen, man, not particularly a giant. 6 foot tall, a little taller than him. But as big as, the biggest bodybuilder you've ever set eyes on times 2,
Yeah.
That's freaking crazy, man. And
Way
then
crazy.
away it went down the hill. So, very bizarre. I don't know. I think if that guy had gone much longer, maybe the tables would have been turned.
Yeah.
Or maybe, obviously, this thing knew they were there, this group.
Oh, he's watching them, yeah.
Yeah, and came into position after this guy was singled out.
Well, I also was going to say, same thing, like if you were looking for bear, you're much more likely to see one if you're by yourself than in a big group. Because a big group, you're moving along hiking and you're talking to one another, you're making noise, and the smell of the group. These animals, these critters, they smell you, they hear you, they see you before you see them most of the time. And the bigger your group is, the more likely they're going to sense you, and therefore the less likely you're going to see them.
Well, let me say this. If you're next to me, you're going to smell me. You know what I'm saying?
I smell what you're saying.
I smell what you're cooking.
I'm 600 miles away, and I smell what you're saying.
Littlefoot, big steak. A great account, man. And you know what? I'm really looking forward to this Harvard thing as well, Kev, this investigation. So we'll have to see what they come up with and what they start printing.
Yeah, maybe when it goes live, too, we'll be able to look at it, and look at some of the recordings and stuff, too, Who knows? Maybe they'll have a live look at it, or a YouTube channel or something like that. We'll have to watch. And if any of our listeners are up there on Harvard's campus in Boston, Massachusetts, let us know. Especially if you're working on this project.
Yeah, and we'll have to give ourselves a little resolve to tap into the Harvard website and look into it periodically. There's got to be some segment on there where these guys will be posting this project as it goes along.
Oh, absolutely.
That's
100%. Great account, Bill. Yeah.
Fantastic. And, again, it reminds me of some of the accounts that I have. One of them we haven't gotten to yet that was really sad and creepy. And a lot of the 411 info about missing persons rings kind of true with this type of encounter, where one was cut off and evidently... Look, Kev, if this thing had gotten a jump on him, could have smashed his head like a pumpkin before he could have said anything, broke his neck. You could think of any number of scenarios.
Oh, I mean, I told you, and I think I mentioned it on this podcast, when I moved out to Spokane, Washington, we would go mountain biking out there, and they would give us these stickers that were like a set of eyes, a set of big, like, black and white eyes that you had to put on the back of your helmet. And I thought they were joking around, but they said no. Like, as we're rolling down the mountain out in the wilderness out there in northern Idaho and eastern Washington, there's so many mountain lions that they would pick off routinely the last person in the line coming down the mountain on the mountain bikes. So you'd put these eyes on the back of the helmet, and it was believed that it would prevent the mountain lions from coming at you because they like to surprise attack, and they thought you were looking at them if they saw the eyes.
Yeah, and they glean that trick from some of these people like in Indonesia and Malaysia and stuff.
Well, even the fish, Bill. You see the fish that have this spot on them that looks like an eye facing backwards, to scare a predator away from them.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know over there in Eastern world, they wear masks on the back of their head when you're the last guy in line.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it looks like a human face looking as you're walking away, you know?
Ah.
Yeah, a full face mask, but on the back of the last guy's head.
Very tricky. Maybe a shrunken head you're wearing behind your head.
A Bigfoot face. Ah. That'll freak you out even if you're a tiger.
Oh, yeah. What
Wow,
the
that was
heck
good
is that?
Yeah. Good stuff, Jim.
Yeah.
Good stuff. So what
Cool,
we got from
all
our
right.
listeners? Anything?
Yeah, we got some good listener mail this week, as usual. Thank you, folks, for sending in the mail. The first one comes from John from Dublin, Ireland. And the subject is St. Patrick's Day.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, because it's coming up here. And he says, Dear Bill and Kevin, I wish you both a happy St. Patrick's Day from Dublin, Ireland. I love your show. Some Irish leprechauns, the little people, will soon trip up those Bigfoot. Some of those Bigfoot with red eyes, well, may well be red Russians. And he says, I will remember your wife in my prayers, Bill. Best wishes, John from Dublin, Ireland.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, and happy St. Patrick's Day to you, John.
Yeah, you shanty old Irishman.
Have a pint of Guinness for me. Some of the mother's milk.
It's interesting. Just a little tap on the shoulders from our listeners. And it's amazing how many people have listened to us over there.
Oh, from all over the world. Yeah, but certainly in Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, and the UK. Yeah.
Yeah. It's unbelievable, you know, and we're glad to have you on board, all of you blokes. It doesn't take much, folks. Just a hello. Just a hello, you know.
Oh, yeah, we love hearing from you. Even if we don't read your note, we still love it. If we don't read it on the air, we will read them all, and they keep us going. We love hearing from you.
Yeah, no, it's nice. It gives us a connection, you know.
Yeah. So we'll move over from the Republic of Ireland to Cam from the UK.
Uh-huh.
And he says, hey, yous guys, Bill and Ted. A little reference to Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. He says, sorry, I mean Bill and Kev. It's Cam again from the UK. And not Cam Newton Kev. Thank goodness. I'm not a Cam Newton fan. He says, I've gotten myself all confused with where I am in the episodes, so I don't know where the heck I am. I don't know if I'm on foot or horseback, as my old dad used to say. I heard you talking about the Jersey Devil or Devils or something in one of your episodes. Wasn't that a team from the failed USFL, the U.S. Football League, from the mid-'80s? And it's like, no, Cam. That was the New Jersey Generals with Herschel Walker and the gang. But the Devils, actually the Jersey Devil, is what the NHL hockey team, the New Jersey Devils, is named after.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool that an NHL team is named after a cryptid. So
I got to think, Kev, don't you think when they named the New Jersey Devil hockey team, they were thinking about the Jersey Devil?
Oh, definitely. 100%. It's documented.
Yeah. Oh, it was?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, I didn't
100%.
know that. I thought somebody just came up with that name, you know?
No, it's definitely named after the Jersey Devils, you know. And now you got the Seattle. I saw the Seattle Kraken play last Sunday night against my Carolina Hurricanes in person, and so that's the newest team in the NHL, named after the fabled Kraken sea monster. So we got another cryptid hockey team, which is great.
Well, I don't know why we don't have a professional Sasquatch team or the Bigfoot.
Well, they do have some minor teams in NHL that are the hairy man. I know I saw a jersey a couple of weeks ago. Somebody had on, I tried to take a picture of it, but it didn't work out, of the skunk apes. some like junior hockey team from Florida, and it had a big hairy man on it.
Nice.
Yeah, it was a good-looking jersey. I got to try to find one of those on eBay.
Maybe down Louisiana, we got the Rougarou.
Little Rougarou team. I'd definitely pay money for that jersey.
That's right. How about the Dog Men of Arkansas? Don't mess with the Dog Men.
Yeah. And back to Cam, he says, I often chuckle to myself while I'm listening to you guys on my Bluetooth earpiece, which can draw occasionally an odd, perplexed glance from the other people that he works with, which is pretty funny. I've been there, Cam. I've been sitting on an airplane and just bust out laughing while I have my little hidden Bluetooth earbuds in my ears, and people look at me like I'm freakier than I already am.
And you know me, Kev. I got nothing to do with laughing in public.
Well, I know, right? Exactly. And then completely coincidentally, we're going to go from Cam in the UK to Lisa from New Jersey. So pretty interesting. We have the mention of the Jersey Devil, and we end up in New Jersey.
All right.
And she says, just a couple of questions. Hello, gentlemen. I'm not sure who she's talking to, Bill. But she says, since there have been so many sightings of both Bigfoot and Dogman in the U.S., have you heard of any sightings of both of them, perhaps at the same time? Oh, she says, no, perhaps in the same area, not necessarily at the same time. My second question to you both is, assuming they may have had overlapping territories, do you think that Bigfoot has or would protect a human being from a creature like Dogman? Or would they simply mind their own business like many other apex predators in the wild would do? I know these questions may seem crazy, but if these creatures do exist at all, do they coexist with each other? Thanks for taking the time to read my email, and please keep the stories coming. Lisa from New Jersey. By the way, Lisa, those are some great questions. They're not crazy at all.
But very difficult to answer, Kev. I mean, what do you?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think based on the accounts you've come across, I don't know. She's not asking this, but we might as well say it. I think there was an account, Bill, where there was a Dogman and a Bigfoot together, or did I dream that one? Maybe.
I think you dreamt it because I've never heard of it.
Could be. I often dream of Dogman, so it could be.
Yeah. I mean, I know we had the fight where the two Bigfoot was squaring off.
Oh, yeah.
In that territorial battle. That was something. And I actually have another one we're going to get into at some point where it seems that these guys encountered another similar struggle, but at a greater distance. But we'll get there. But
and I think in a greater area like Michigan, we hear of Bigfoot in Michigan and certainly Dogman in Michigan, but that's a very large area. I don't know if they coexist in the same acreage and stuff like that. I doubt it. And then the question, like, would a Bigfoot, potentially protect a human from a Dogman? I mean, possibly, right? Dogman generally thought of some type of more evil creature than a Bigfoot. I don't know. What do you think, Bill?
I don't know, but I think in nature, animals tend to avoid each other unless you're going to attack the other for food or territory.
And that's her reference, I guess, to other apex predators,
Yeah,
Grizzly's
I don't know.
not going to save you, from an orca whale or something.
Yeah.
Doesn't work that
I don't know.
way.
So it's a weird phenomenon, and I don't think we're going to be able to come up with a suitable answer.
No.
Because it's totally conjecture what would happen,
But, Lisa, I love the questions. I love them. I don't think they're crazy at all. It gets us thinking. It's cool.
Yeah, it's interesting. And thanks for chiming in, Lisa.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then our last email, Bill, comes in from Chester. And Chester says, in your last episode, which was really fun, by the way, you mentioned that you were recording it on both your dad's birthday and Bill and Paula's anniversary. How could it get any better or cooler than that?
Yeah.
And he says, well, that very same day, my sweet sister-in-law and dear sister in Christ gave birth to her second child.
Wow.
Praise the Lord. And then he has a funny, so thank you, Chester. And then he has a funny question in the end. He says, I do have one question for you two. Which one of you is Wayno and which one is Plutonor? Which were those crazy wild men, right?
You know, Kevin, I told you, when I looked at the pictures that you posted of those two little cats,
Yeah.
you know, I thought I was going to see some stocky little beefy characters when you told me about them lifting
Picking up
hundreds of pounds.
200-pound humans, and they were only 40 inches tall, or what? No, they were only 45 pounds each, or whatever.
Yeah, and they was
They were
scrawny
tiny,
little
scrawny
characters.
little cavemen of sorts.
Strange looking little buggers, too, man.
Yeah, yeah.
Wayne,
And by the way, Bill, I don't know which one is which, Wayno or Plutonor. Who do you want to be, Bill? I'll give you a preference.
I'll take Plutonor.
Oh, I was going to take Plutonor.
All right, you can be. I'll be Wayno.
All right, Wayno. But thanks for the note, Chester. And Bill, by the way, it came to me while we were talking, when we were talking earlier in the podcast about the ship being discovered. It was the Endurance, so I was close, and it was Shackleton, Captain Ernest Shackleton. So
Yep.
pretty cool, folks. If you haven't seen that footage, look it up. You know, you just Google it, Shackleton ship Endurance or whatever, and you'll see the footage this week that was posted of the discovery of the ship, and it's like in beautiful condition under the icy clear waters.
Well, mind you, Kev, now beautiful condition, maybe the pieces are in good shape, but that ship got crushed over a
but
period
you
of
can see
time
like
in the ice.
The shot I saw was from the stern of it, and like the stern rail was all the way around the back, and the ship's wheel was intact, and clearly the ship's wheel. Now, it probably had huge gaping holes in the hull of the ship. Yeah.
It got crushed pretty good. And, you know, you can see the name Endurance on the transom of the boat, you know.
100 years ago, right? You know.
Yeah. That was an incredible story of survival.
Oh, yeah.
And man's will winning out over incredible odds.
And great leadership. You know, him stepping in, the captain stepping in and telling them all what to do, right? That's fantastic.
Yeah, yeah. You know, Kev, I'm just thinking maybe you could just do a brief exegesis one day on what happened to them, like a real condensed version.
Oh, yeah, that would be cool. I'm up for that.
Yeah, because it's worth talking about, even though you could probably spend a solid hour just talking about it, but maybe one day on Other Oddities we could give that I think
the listeners would be interested in that. I'm certainly interested in it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that was an incredible feat.
Very cool.
Wow, that's great stuff, man. So that's it, huh?
That's it.
Well, remember, folks, if you should find yourself walking around in the New Jersey Pine Barrens, perhaps you may encounter the Jersey Devil. And if that happens, you better remember just one thing. Always carry more gun than you think you're going to need. Sleep tight.